Welcome in to another episode of the My Two Bits Gators Football Podcast. Interestingly, episode 44. And for those who know Jack Pyburn's number, weird coincidence. But at any rate, I'm one of your hosts, Ben, joined as always by our other host, Mr. Randy. Randy, how we feeling tonight? How we doing?
B, doing good, man. Looking forward to this pod with you. Looking forward to go over all the things of the season and what a season it was, my friend. Not what we wanted, not what we hope. Hoping for a little bit better, but I'll tell you what, it ended in a very good way. We ended on a positive.
Yes, that it did, and I hope that continues on Friday. But regardless, it was very much a good end of the season, and I think built on a lot of things. And we'll have to see, what happens moving forward with that. I think there's still a lot of question marks, as we know, but nonetheless, looking forward to doing this with you as well. I agree. Kind of going back, taking a look at everything we saw throughout the season, doing some reviews here, and to that end, I'll get into the intro, the mission, accurate disclaimer, vision, and agenda for tonight. So. As always, our mission is to provide factual analysis of all things Florida Gator football. Our accuracy disclaimer is that our information will be accurate to the best of our possible ability. We will cite our sources whenever we use them, and all statistical data comes from either ESPN or NCAAstat.org, unless we otherwise cite it. And then recruiting data, of course, comes from on3.com. So, our vision, as always, is to have unfiltered conversation around the product on the field, as well as recruiting and overall coaching decisions. Our analysis will be based on review of film, and while we will express opinion, that opinion should always be based in some form of fact. We will also evaluate strategy and tactics and discuss our observation of player personnel decisions, as well as on-the-field execution. That is getting to be quite a mouthful to start this podcast. I would love to cut it down, but I feel like it's all got to be there. Like, it's important that we start that every time, especially with the accuracy stuff now. So for those that don't know, we added that in this season because we just saw so much inaccurate information floating around on a regular basis out there. So just something that we wanted to say that, hey, we're going to do our absolute best to make sure that what we're providing is as accurate as humanly possible. Yes. So to that end, now to the agenda for the season recap here. So we will start off with the overall rankings of the offense and the defense, kind of look where we finished out the season on those things. Obviously, we still have a bowl game, but frankly, I don't love counting bowl games and those numbers anyway. So I'm glad we were able to do this before that and get those stats in there. We will then have a review of the strengths and weaknesses of the 2024 team. We did this in the season preview both years, and we want to go back through and say, okay, we thought this would be a strength, a weakness, or we thought it would be neutral. What does it look like now? Or just kind of give our evaluation of what we think each position group ended up looking like overall, and kind of talking through that. So we'll do that for offense, defense, and special teams, actually. And then we will have a brief little discussion around the strength of schedule versus the record. So we kind of alluded to this to start with, right? That the record isn't what we wanted. However, maybe it was, pretty okay, actually. And we need to talk about why that's the case. We'll draw back to some stuff we actually covered, I think, in the end of last season or the beginning of the off season last year. That's what I want to say. And kind of talk to expectations and what we really need to be looking at there. So that's important. We'll then have full season superlatives. So we'll go through our offensive and our defensive best of the best there. And then we'll also add one in for freshmen, which I don't know if we had one for freshmen when we started off the year kind of profiling players. But regardless, we'll do it for a freshman as well. Wonder who that'll be. Big secret there. And though you do have choices, actually. You do have choices. And then we will play Keep It or Pitch It for our full season results, go through those and how we finished out, and then set up a final round of Keep It or Pitch It for the bowl game this week. So, and then we'll also go through some sim results on the bowl game, kind of talk to that. Those were kind of interesting. And then we will wrap this thing up. So I know that was a long talk through the agenda, longer than usual. However, I think it's important to let you know what we're going to be going through and doing, and we will get into it now. So to that end, Randy, get us started. Talk some overall rankings for offense and defense, if you would, please, sir.
Awesome, my man. All right, so let's start off with some of what the offense did this year. Let's go into total offense. Okay, we're talking about yards per game. 375.1 yards per game. Good for number 81st in the nation. in case someone's wondering out there, I wonder what we did last year. Here's what we did last year in 2023. 409.1 yards per game, good for number 48th in the nation. So we took a slight step back there by about 34 yards. That is what it is. Let's go to yards per play. Yards per play this year ranked number 36 in the nation at 6.22 yards per play. What did we do last year, 2023? We were at number 46 in the nation at 6.05 yards per play. So very interesting either way. So I think for a lot of people, they're looking at that number going 375. It didn't look that good, especially towards the end of the season there, right? We didn't average a lot of yards per play. But at the end of the day, big difference when it came to certain, I don't know, downfield plays.
Yep.
Big difference there. Even though, because the other thing that we thought was interesting was time of possession. Last year, 2023, Florida was a top 10 time of possession school, or time of possession team. Right. This year, time of possession, number 116 in the nation, 27 minutes. Okay, down a full almost 7 minutes compared to 2023. So big difference there when it came to the overall offense. What happened with pushing the ball down the field? There was a certain quarterback that was responsible for that, Mr. DJ Lagway. Lesser drives. Last year we had a lot of methodical drives, didn't we? 11, 12, 13 plays.
Yep.
This year, not a lot of methodical drives. So outside of that, what do you have on the offense, B?
Well, so I really like those takeaways, and I think the important stat to look at there is the yards per play, right? Because to your point, when you balance in time of possession, right, and looked at, we went down almost 5 minutes per game. Isn't that about right? When we were somewhere around 32 last year. I'm going from memory, so help me out.
5 or 6, right? Yep.
So significant drop off in time of possession, but your yards per play go up. Now, there's different ways that you can have less time of possession, right? You can not be sustaining drives and not making big plays, and then you're going to lose a lot of games. Right. So so those are the options. But because that yards per play number went up, we were actually more efficient on offense or more explosive, both. Because we actually had that higher yards per play average. So I will take the drop in yardage because the yards per play went up. And that to me is more important. We gained almost 0.2 on the season, and that's a lot, right? That's a lot of increase when you look at it over a whole season full of plays, right? So if we had kept that number last year with that time of possession, we would have been well in the 400s, and probably approaching top 25-ish, maybe even higher. Honestly, I'd have to go back and look. But the takeaway there is definitely the yards per play for me. That's what really tells us the story of this offense versus last year's offense. We didn't have as much ball control, but we got explosives that we didn't get last year. And that's the main takeaway. And it wasn't all in the passing game either. We really had a lot of explosive runs too, which was cool.
Yeah.
So yeah, that would be my thoughts on that. I think not happy to see that number go down so significantly on the total offense, but again, with the yards per play going up, I'm not going to get upset about it, because the yards per play is something that, again, if we have a greater time of possession, right, if defense does a better job getting them off the field more consistently, I think you see that overall number go up significantly from there. So, all right, having said that, let's move on to defense. What do we got?
All right, on the defense side of the football, people, here we go. As far as total offense, we are at number 90, or total defense, number 92 in the nation at 392.2 yards per game. Okay, so a little bit of an uptick. Again, last year we were number 68. In 2023, 382.2 yards per game. 10-yard variance, not the end of the world. But look at that 10-yard variance, right? It shifts almost 30 spots. Unreal. And then let's go to yards per play. Number 52 in the nation at 5.37 yards per play. What happened last year? Number 118 in the nation at 6.44 yards per play. That's a variance.
Yep, for sure.
That's very significant. So hey, more snaps on defense, allowed more explosives, and I think we saw that this year with the bend don't break philosophy of this defense.
Yep.
So there you go. What do you got, B, on the defensive side of the football and stats?
Yeah, I agree. I think you called it with the bend don't break, right? We were letting teams sustain drives, but then stopping them when they got down, in the red zone. Obviously, when we go to our scoring defense number, we'll see that, which is later on. But the points per game was not the issue. It was the yards per game. However, you weren't seeing it in yards per play. So what does that mean? It means we limited explosives, right? It means we limited explosives significantly, brought that number down over a yard per play. That's wild. It's so crazy significant. It's hard to even talk about, honestly. Over a yard per play is nuts. But when we look at that though, but what does that mean we were doing? Well, it means we were, because the total yards went up, obviously. It means we were letting teams sustain drives. It means we were not necessarily so great on third down.
Right.
Or second down or first down for that matter, right? Because we were giving stuff up that was allowing them to get to positions where they could sustain drives. But fortunately, we did a really good job of not letting that result in points. But we kind of talked about this with the defense last week. In theory, this is fine, but I question the sustainability. And now that we have the news that Mr. Armstrong is off to Houston, very disappointed in that. Very disappointed in that. I really, really love AA and going to miss him. I'm a little worried that we get more of that Ron Roberts philosophy of just give them the underneath, just give them the underneath, just give them the underneath, and then don't give up the score. Don't give up the big play. Don't give up the score. Again, in theory, it's fine, but in practice, it can backfire on you, right? Because if you do just keep giving it up, keep giving it up, keep giving it up, keep giving it up, and then they do score, now you've let them have a long sustained drive that resulted in points.
Momentum.
Not good, right? Not good. And I also think part of the reason this defense was as successful as it was is the next thing that we're going to talk about. I'll just go ahead and lead into it. Total turnovers for the year. 22. Last year we had 7. This year we have 22. That's crazy different. And that's a big deal because it ties for 17th in the nation. And that's part of the reason why you see the success that this defense did have in preventing points is we got the ball away from the opponent a lot. We were also, I think, top 30 or maybe it was top 35. Again, I'd have to go back and look for the exact ranking, but our turnover margin rank, our net with our turnovers versus what we gained, which was also positive, which last year it was not. It was negative, so that's not good. And then, of course, there's the sack number as well here, right, which is tying for 7th at 38, which is 16 more than we had last year, right? So once again, more effective at tackles for loss, more effective at sacks, more effective at turnovers. You do that with a bend don't break, yeah, it's going to be fine. But what if those other things don't come together? Turnovers you cannot just make happen. I mean, you can put effort into it to try to increase them, but at the end of the day, you're not just going to you're not going to guarantee them, I guess is what I'm trying to say. I suppose to a degree you can make them happen. But tackles for loss, sacks, yes, those are things you can try and generate, but you have to be careful doing that because you don't want to give up, the underneath stuff if you are on a blitz or something like that that's doing that. So it gets to be, and I get defenses give or take regardless, but there are things about last year's defense that I liked better than this year's defense. I didn't like the explosive play rate, but man, there was more that I had excitement for in last year's defense. And what I was hoping for is next year we get the best of both worlds. Now that we're losing AA, I don't know. I'm not convinced. So those are my overall thoughts. Sorry if I stole thunder on some of those other stats there, but yeah, that's where I would say I have it on defense. I'm still happy about it, but it's concerning to me. It's something we got to watch.
I'll tell you what, B, no thunder stolen at all. 22 turnovers compared to 7 last year. Huge turnaround. I get it. It seems like, well, wasn't that good? Okay, how does this work? It's almost like gimmick plays, right? It sounds good until it doesn't work, until it proves not to work, right? When it becomes too gimmicky. Either way, the other number that you referenced, turnover margin, tied for 37th in the nation. tied for 37th in the nation.
Nice.
Plus,
all right, I was pretty close. I think I said 36th off the top of my head. That's good.
Yep, plus 0.42 average. So that'll do. And that's the other thing. When you look at the gauntlet of the schedule that it was, I know we'll get into it, and the way that what was really impressive to me was the way that the defense finished games, especially the last three. There was a lot of There was a lot of. I mean, no one expected LSU to come in there and Nussmeier to get sacked 8 times, right? Jackson Dart, for that matter. No one expected him to get sacked 4 times, right? So there's some phenomenal opportunities there. And to quote, Billy Napes, trying to play that game of complementary football and helping out that young quarterback as much as possible and giving them the momentum and the tools that they need to go out and push the ball down the field, despite the other issues that we have with that. But either way, some great things. And again, kudos to what the coaching staff did, listening to players, listening and scheming at the end of that first bye or during that first bye to make the necessary adjustments needed so that we would not see more explosive plays and blowouts the rest of the season. So massive week 1 our first bye adjustment to allow some of that to come together, to allow communication to solidify. So that was probably a turning point for the defense for all season. If that didn't happen at that first bye, I'm not sure what the rest of the season does look like.
Yeah, absolutely. And we'll, I think, kind of talk to some of that, first bye stuff and then improvements from there when we go down these position groups. Quick stat correction: 7 sacks against LSU, 8 against FSU.
Sorry. Thank you.
You got your SUs confused, but don't worry. LSU is apparently going to be the new Florida West, so we won't have to call them LSU anymore. So we'll get to that another time.
Florida West 1, Florida West 2. Okay.
We'll come up with some other name for it, but yeah, that's.
I'm sure we will.
It's just, here we go again. But anyway, moving right along. All right. If you don't know what we're talking about, we're referring to some of the transfer activity that's happened. So we'll leave it at that for now. We'll touch on that in another episode. So let's get this thing started. Offense by position group. So quarterback, obviously the way we're going to start this out, most important position on offense, potentially on the team. Strength, obviously, right? We called for it to be a strength, though it's funny because I wonder, now I'll talk to that in a second about Mertz, but I'll leave that alone. Clearly Lagway's the future. I don't want to roll over the importance of Mertz to this team in general, right? Because he was phenomenally important last year. But if I'm going to include him in this year's discussion, his first 2 games, Miami and Florida West, were quite subpar, if I'm going to be honest, right? His numbers were not good. Then he had a good game against a bad team in Mississippi State, right? Because he didn't play Sanford, obviously. And then a decent showing against UCF that could have been better before, though that's not all on him. Some of that's play calling too. Before going on the road and playing well against Tennessee before he got hurt in that game. But not like spectacularly well, but it was good. It was vintage, Mertz that we wanted in that situation. Anyway, overall, I got to say that's not a great showing by Mertz this year. If I'm going to really evaluate his total year that he played, I'm not thrilled. Too many bad games and not enough good ones to make up for it, quite frankly. However, obviously, that's not the whole season. And the whole season would encompass both DJ and Aiden Warner, right? But DJ obviously made up for anything that was lacking the rest of the way, was just some outstanding plays that we've, of course, talked about. We do need to add depth behind DJ, because while we were very willing to give Aiden a third-string quarterback pass on this particular podcast, even though some others did not, he cannot be the second-string quarterback. That would not be okay. You have to have a backup that's at least serviceable, and I struggle to call him serviceable. Love the kid, think he's great. Love his passion for playing here and the game overall, but it was rough. It was rough. So, got to have a better second string somewhere in my mind, even if it's another freshman, right? Could be Tramel Jones. I don't know. But anyway, what are your thoughts at QB?
Really good overall. And that's the thing, B. It's really hard to call out Graham because of what he's meant to this program, to what he did last year.
Yeah,
But
it is hard. It is hard.
yeah, and I think we were just shell shocked, especially after the Miami game. Like, what in Sam Hill did we just watch?
Yeah, 91 yards passing for Grimards
You
in the Miami
know,
game. For those that don't
like,
remember.
yeah, is this what we waited
Yeah.
10 plus months for? Like, no, this is some weird voodoo crap going on. No, this can't be, right? Graham's going to be the field general. Graham's going to be second year in the offense. He's got it under control, right? Because a lot of his strengths, right, based off of what we'd seen, right, pre and post snap reads, right, the ability to throw on the move, to the pop passes, the bubble screens, those 11, 12, 13 play drives we talked about. We just didn't see it this year. DJ Lagway. I don't know what else there is to be said about this kid. He's unreal as far as his ability to come in. Now, again, Graham helped a lot with the preparation, the mental side. Even though Graham got hurt in the Tennessee game and he's been out since the Tennessee game, they still room together on Fridays. They still room together on the road. He's still going through game prep Thursday, Friday, Saturday morning. So those are obviously intangibles that you really can't put a value on, right? It's like, okay, show me from a marketing standpoint, what's the ROI from advertising on the radio? Well, I don't know. It's hard to track that metric, but there's definitely value there. So what Mertz meant to DJ in that sense, for the mentor, for showing him the ropes, irreplaceable. Love it. Love their relationship. And that's the thing. DJ's been able to flourish and thrive because of that. But I'm telling you, this kid, and B, I'm going to refer back to you when you said earlier this year, when that ball gets out of his hand, especially downfield, 20 plus yards, it is absolute magic, right? Absolute magic. So here's the thing. Is it Aiden? Is it, what's going to happen to Aiden? What's going to happen to Millen, right? Obviously, we've got Tramel Jones coming in, and there are a couple of other things, right, that we're looking in the portal. So we'll see outside of that. But I can't say that the quarterback position was not a strength this year, especially seeing what the downfield ball did in those games.
Yep. No, absolutely. And it did change the game for sure. And obviously there's some other things too that he's capable of that change the game as well, like getting out of sacks from 300-pound linemen. But moving right along, speaking of linemen, let's move it on and talk a little O-line here. So preseason, I called for this to be a weakness until proven otherwise. That was my statement. And it absolutely was a weakness to start the season. Oh boy, couple revolving doors on those tackles to start the season. However, and I would actually argue it was potentially worse than last year's to start the year. But as it moved along, and as a lot of these things, this is going to be a recurring theme, right? And obviously anybody who watched the games knows this, but the line improved. It found the starting rotation that worked, right? The starting five that really kind of set it together and made it gel and really started playing better overall. And it became a unit as much as any O-line I've seen at UF in a long time, that was actually reliable, dependable, right? I don't know that I can get it to where I would say the entire line was a strength. Slaughter and Barber were strengths for sure. Najee at times. Crenshaw Dixon at times. But there's not a game where I can point to and say this line was unreal this game. Like they were out of their minds. They were almost perfect. I don't have that. And I would need that for how bad they were at the start of the season for me to call it a strength. So for me, it ends up being neutral. It ends up being a push by the end of the year, which, hey, that's an improvement from a weakness that, I wanted to be proven wrong about. And I think ultimately I was, which is great. They had enough games that were, either acceptable to plus versus those bad ones at the beginning that I can call it neutral for me, which, it's not what we want still, but it's an improvement. So what do you got?
I think that's a fair assessment, man. I think we talked about it as long regarding what's going to happen to this offense. Can we give Graham another second second and a half? Can we protect him enough? And I tell you what, the way the season started, hands were in head. Right? I'm not talking full blown surrender cobra, but head was definitely in hands. I'll say it that way.
Yes, for sure, for sure.
You know, and that's the other thing too. When you look at what happened during the year, there were a lot of flashes this year, especially when it came to the run game, when it came to certain people getting out in front, Damian George. When it came to Crenshaw Dixon getting out in front, giving a pancake here and there, right? We had some successful opportunities in the run game this year with the scheme later on in the year. But at the end of the day, I don't know how much more this offense could have done given what it was, given the lineup, given the adjustments,
right,
given shifting from right to left tackle or left to right guard, so on and so forth. Obviously, Jake Slaughter, hats off to Jake, right?
Yeah.
When you look at the season that he had last year, in and back from Kingsley, Ugakin, obviously, who had a lot of ankle issues last year. This year, the full-time starter. And boy, if we didn't have him as the full-time starter, I really don't know what the offensive line would have looked like, right? Definitely much worse.
Yeah, so I think for sure. He was the anchor for sure.
Right. So he was the glue. Definitely. He was the anchor. But outside of that, I can't, when you look at strength, weakness, I have to put the O-line as more neutral than anything else, in lieu of all the other things that we wanted to see that were very inconsistent at times. And I'll tell you what, especially when you look at some of the false starts that were called, it wasn't a lot compared to the year before, but I really expect to see almost zero this year.
Yeah, there were more than I wanted, for sure.
More than wanted, exactly. So that's why I am going to go with a neutral, to your point.
All right, I like it. All right, moving on. Let's talk running back. We called for this to be a strength despite the loss of he who shall not be named. And boy, were we right. Okay. Boy, were we right. Outstanding unit, and hats off to. I just heard new pronunciation of his name that I hadn't heard before. I guess it's Jaluk. It's not Jaluk. So apologies for getting that wrong for a long time. But I think that's correct, that it's Jaluk. Just in some outstanding coaching. Even when Montrell went down, we had phenomenal play, of course, from Baugh and Jackson. And I'm really looking forward to next season with this unit as being one of the ones to really watch, to see what this room can continue to produce with even more high-end recruits coming into the mix, right? We got some more guys that are coming into this room. So now, what happens now that, Baugh and Jackson are the leaders, does we start seeing a little more Katie Daniels, in the rotation? Do we start seeing another freshman? I don't know. Does Webb come back in? I don't know. There's a lot of depth in this room. We're going to have about 7 backs when it's all said and done. Really, really strong room. So we'll see what happens. What are your thoughts on running back?
Love the running back room. I love the fact that we expected Montrell to have a stellar season as the senior. He was hurt, hurt out in multiple games, and we did not miss a beat. Did we miss Montrell in those games? Certain runs, certain opportunities when it came to momentum, when it came to needing certain short yardage situations where we needed to plow through. Of course, I'm glad you didn't say it, because I will since he has left, since he has transferred, I have not mentioned his name. I haven't even said his brother's name. Not that I would need to for Jacksonville, because they're absolutely deplorable, but it is what it is.
They're not good.
He was not missed, folks. Not missed.
Really wasn't. And it's funny. We talked about it when it happened too. We said, okay, there's talent that's leaving the room here. You can't look away from that.
Sure.
And I still think that's the case, but it is remarkable how well we just replaced that with other talent and didn't even skip a beat. It's really remarkable.
Exactly. Right. So obviously Johnson missed several games. So who do we have step up? Then Treon Webb gets hurt. Who steps up? A true freshman and a transfer in Baugh and Jackson, right? They just went in, handled business, did what they can do. And that's the other thing too. Would have loved to see more out of Webb, but again, the injury bug got him. Would have loved to see more out of Cam Carroll, transfer from Tulane, tore his ACL last year, right? Would have loved to see more of him. He clearly couldn't go. But to see what Baugh and Jacoby did, to hold down that core, and then to see like you said, the flash of Daniels,
Yep.
what he was able to do. Again, folks, true freshman. And then when you see what we're reloading with coming back and running back, I agree with you. Be exciting room, exciting opportunities in this offense, and overall, these guys, Baugh and Jackson, have scar tissue. Webb's definitely going to have scar tissue. So with that, I'm just curious to see what they look like next year. How much better they get, stronger, faster, smarter within the realm of the offense and what they're able to do from out of the backfield.
Yep.
Make no bones about it. Absolute strength. Be agreed.
Yeah, for sure. For sure. All right, moving along to the next category here. We will talk wide receiver. So, my opening comment is thank goodness for the transfer portal. Because this was a strength that we called for it to be, but only, and I mean only, because of the play of our leading two receivers, DK and Badger, both transfers. So, the play, but also the amount of time given to play or being able to play, depending on the situation, from our 2023 receiver class that looked to be very, very strong, right, was less than stellar. Now, it's not Trey's fault. He got hurt, right? So we're not going to knock Trey, though I don't like the ways we were using him before that happened, but that's another conversation and not Trey's fault. So the only receiver that I can really call out from the 23 class that I thought, kind of made some progress on film this year and increased in value is Mizell. Mizell really looked like he was starting to get the hang of things and everything else. Obviously, we didn't see Andy Jean pretty much at all, and he is now transferred, and that's fine because he couldn't stay healthy and couldn't get on the field, and I wish him well, and I hope he does good things somewhere else. I think he's still a talented kid, but he's got to stay healthy, right? Best ability is availability, right? So, you got to be there. I will say overall, we came in here where we wanted to at this position group, but I don't want us to be portal dependent in order to get there every year. Now, I think we have a lot of talent. I think Trey coming back and actually being healthy, obviously Vernell Brown coming in, who's potentially an outstanding player. We both really like Nashawn Montgomery as well. Think he's got a lot of upside, right? Tank in his second year in the system. So there's Mizell in his third, right? You're looking at the potential for guys we do have on the roster to be there and be better. But I still think we're going to need some portal help this year in order to make it a strength yet again. I think we still need a little bit of a hand there, but I think, but that's okay, right? Those guys are in the portal. You can get those guys. In fact, I just saw where we're getting a 5-star probably on campus at some point. I don't know when it's going to be, but he's finalizing the details. 5-star out of Texas, actually, former 5-star, I should say. But yeah, so just interesting there. But overall, I think did end up being a strength for sure, and happy that we had it. But we wouldn't have been there without the portal help. So, what do you got on receiver?
Yeah, I think that's a fair point. B, a couple of good call outs there. It's funny. This position for me was almost going to be a wild card, right? You're like, okay, we've got this guy coming back and this guy coming back, and this is going to be great, and this is going to be great, okay, and because obviously last year losing Pearsall, we knew we lost a veteran, we lost a leader, almost at 1,000 yards, and what we were going to get this year. I tell you what, you're definitely not wrong regarding thank you for the portal, because DK and Badger led the charge this year. Consistency, stability, and not to mention they can catch a long, beautiful ball thrown by Mr. Lagway.
Yeah, no, absolutely. We definitely need somebody that's going to be able to break that man coverage and get deep again, like Badger did so consistently this year, or a static zone, either one. But really need somebody like that who's got that ability on the outside to be able to get those balls, because that's obviously going to be paramountly important when you have somebody that can throw the deep ball so well. So there you go.
Exactly. And to that end, I wish Arizona State had a few more that we can go back and get, right? But yeah, we're gonna have Trey back nice and healthy.
Hey, we'll see what happens in the portal once their national title run is done in the playoff, which congrats to them for making the playoff. But I
Yeah,
don't think that's going to be a long-lived run for them, unfortunately. Even though they did end up with a bye, which is kind of crazy. But
they did.
I think they're going to run into some trouble there when they play their first round. But we'll see what happens. Never know.
Yeah,
Um,
yeah,
and yeah, long story short, uh, we'll see. Maybe their guys aren't in the portal yet. They're going to get their window after, right? So, I mean,
yeah.
theoretically, it's open for them, but they get an extended window after the game, and I think a lot of kids will wait on that. So we'll see. But anyway,
No.
all right. Last but not least on offense, tight end. This was a wait and see for me at the beginning of the year, right? I said I called it neutral with the opportunity to be great, but it was a wait and see, and I'm still waiting. I'm still waiting. Let me check my watch. Yeah, still waiting. Uh, did not see everything that we really needed to see out of this group this year. Hansen really does look solid, but him by himself isn't enough to call this position group a strength. And we don't utilize the tight ends in passing often enough, right? We went through a little phase last year with Boardingham where he was catching balls left and right, but that obviously didn't happen this year. And hello, Portal. And I get it, right? You're wanting to be a receiver of the ball. That's not really happening in this offense. It's more about blocking, right? Now I would say there are some things we could potentially do to address that. Wonder what those are. But but until that day comes, which who knows if it will. And what I'm referring to is, of course, an offensive coordinator, if that wasn't clear. But until that day comes, which again, that's a big maybe. Then we'll just have to wait and see what the tight ends look like. And I think Hanson's are going to be your better option than Boardingham's, right? Guys that want to be in there and block and then go out for a pass on occasion, right? That's what this offense really thrives upon at tight end, and uh, that's unfortunate because it should be better than that, but that's where we're currently at right now. So, what do you got on old TE there?
Yeah, this one I thought was going to be a strength this year because of the way that we're going to be used, and they weren't used the way that we thought they were going to be used. So on that basis, I had them at a neutral. Boardingham agreed. In 23, we saw him go off on a couple games. He had 2 touchdowns a couple games, and then all of a, it's almost like as if he was a ghost this year. Hayden's size is what it is. I love his size. I love his reach. I love his hands. He's really good to catch the football. Boardingham probably a little bit more athletic, but at the end of the day, Boardingham had issues with blocking. And in this
Yes.
offense, the tight ends need to block. And so, hey, we saw Tony Livingston. He's got some good capabilities. He's got good
Yes.
size, good reach, good hands. Amir
Yep.
Jackson, he had a showing. Good size, good reach, good hands, physical, right? Is able to block, right? Because that's the other thing, too. This offense is going to constitute that. So at the end of the day, again, nothing negative. Hansen had some great passes down the middle. DJ and Mertz alike found him down the middle for 7-yard gains, 12-yard gains, dependable. But at the end of the day, this was a neutral for me this year, B.
Yep, I'm right there with you, but honestly, neutral leaning weakness, because we just didn't have enough in the group. I mean, I guess that's not fair. It's neutral because we don't ask this group to do much more than what they did. Now, I will say Boardingham blew a lot of blocks, but so
Right.
that's questionable at times. But overall, Hansen did not. I didn't see Livingston do that. So I think you're getting to a place where the guys that want to block at that position on this team, which they should want to block because you're not going to really get to the NFL and not have to block at that position. So,
Right.
they should want to block. Um, yeah, I think we're going to see that's the kind of player that we're going to need to have again, assuming something doesn't change offensively. So, moving along. Defense, get us started. Talk to us about some D line. Give me your thoughts.
Yeah, man. Let's start off with the D line. So it's interesting, right? Because when you look at what we wanted to have happen in the off season, right, before the season started, we thought this was going to be an absolute strength. Correct, B?
So I actually had it as neutral because even though I had a lot of hope for it, I had doubts because there was a lot of guys that were unproven on the line.
Fair.
I didn't have a guy I could go to and say this guy's going to crush it, right? I thought that could be Sapp. I thought that could be Boone, right?
Boone.
Whoops. I thought that could be Slackman.
Yeah,
I thought that could be Cam Jackson. Yeah, okay, there's one. I didn't
yeah,
think it was going to be Caleb Banks, and wow, was I wrong? So there just wasn't a certainty that I could say, yes, this is my dude. Whereas going into next year, I can, but that's another conversation. So yeah, so I had it as neutral. You, I think, did have it as a strength, though. I'm going from memory here. I'd have to go back and look at the notes, but I
yeah.
think you
I
had it
did.
as a strength. And I was different just because I wanted to see it proved out. So that's the only reason.
Well, and that's the other thing too, because I figured with Boone coming back from that injury, right? With Boone and Pyburn, and that's the other thing too. Pyburn showed us way more than I thought he could ever be, right? As far as that position,
Yes, we were
especially
not
coming.
talking about Jake Plyburn in the preseason.
Oh, that's right. Yeah, yeah. Jake Plyburn, as we read in a particular article, we won't name the source, but Jake Plyburn, ladies and gentlemen,
Jake
apparently
Plyburn.
played this.
Yeah, that's right. That's right.
We'll
All
just
right,
leave
moving
that
along.
here
Moving
for it.
along.
Exactly. But here's the thing. Much different, especially after the bye week, much more push. It was great to see what they were able to do as far as establishing the line of scrimmage, going after the offensive line for other teams, and getting the push to the quarterback. When you look at what this defensive line did at the latter half of the season and what they
Yeah.
did overall, to especially that's why the sack number went up. That's why we were able to get off the field in a certain amount of times, and especially be so effective against LSU and Ole Miss. Again, at the time, if you guys don't remember, LSU and Ole Miss, when we played them, were top 10 offenses,
Yep.
top 5 in third down conversions. Like
Yep.
that was not a fluke. So definitely got better. And if anything, this year, this defensive line showed us what was possible, especially with the young bodies that we have that played as well. Because LJ McCray came in and did some things. George Gums, not a young guy, but George Gums,
Yes.
wow. Wow.
Well, he's relatively young. He's only redshirt sophomore, right?
I thought redshirt junior, but obviously first year
You
with
could be
us.
right. You could be right, but he's got
You
another
know,
year left regardless.
he's got another exactly right. Cam Jackson, we're gonna miss him. But boy, Banks coming back. I'm just curious to see what
Huge.
he's gonna do. Obviously, we lost Gums for the last 4 games of the season with injury, so that was what it was. But outside of that, Sapp to see what he did and how he shifted. I love to see what happened with Aaron Childs. I love to see. I'm sorry, not Aaron Childs. I love to see what happened along that front line there with McCray.
Yep.
Cubby Collins is going to be gone. No problem. That's fine.
Yep.
But either way, uh, towards the end of the season, this was definitely going to be a positive.
Yeah, so it's interesting. I have kind of a similar take, right? And I said I was neutral, but I would say that what it turned out to be in the end was a huge weakness to start. We were not good
Yeah.
enough. We were not getting pushed. We were not getting penetration at any point of the line. About the only thing I could say that was halfway decent was gap discipline, which gap discipline stayed really good all year and actually got even better as we got more push, which is impressive because usually when you get more push, that's when gap discipline falls apart, right? And it didn't. It didn't. It was really, really good. That was probably the strength of this unit all season long. You can tell it really got stressed. Their gap discipline was phenomenal, phenomenal. So really good stuff there. But at the beginning, that was the only good thing I could say about it, right? Was that their gap discipline was pretty good. And other than that, it was rough, rough. So then we improved after the bye week, to your point, and it started to get better, but it was still only neutral. If you remember, we did our mid-season analysis after the 7th game at our second bye week, and 7 games in, we were only pacing 429 sacks, which was our number that we called for an over-under on 29 and a half, I think. But regardless, like we were pacing 429 and ended up with 38. So those last 5 games, whoa, they went nuts, right? The D-line really got after it, and it wasn't just them, but it was mostly them, really doing a phenomenal job with what they needed to do. So for me, it went from a weakness to a neutral to a strength throughout this season, which is pretty amazing. It's pretty amazing, honestly. Really, really impressive to see that kind of transformation throughout the year, and hats off to these guys for not just saying, oh, well, we're not getting it done, so it's not good enough or whatever. They really stuck with it. So, really, really interested to see what next year looks like with this unit. Again, with some key pieces coming back, right? We're not 100% sure on Sapp, but we think he's coming back, right? We know Caleb's coming back, which is huge, right? You got your young guy Makai Burrow in the middle there, right? And I may be pronouncing his name wrong. Apologies if I am, but at least I'm going to spell it right.
Burrow, you got it.
And while you lose Pyburn, obviously you have LJ McCray who's starting to come up, right, in his role and his timing. Of course, Searcy is there and he's looking better as we go. Gums, I think, is going to come back, like we said. I wouldn't know why he wouldn't. So that's another one in the fold. And you just go on and on and on. And right, we get back to this rotation that we were able to do again this year. We had guys play that were very unsung and unheralded. Brian Taylor got in these games. We talked about him as a JUCO transfer, and he got into these games and played. Yeah. You had Jaden Robinson come in and play some. Another big guy in the middle, right? Or no, Jaden is the linebacker. It might be Brian Robinson. I can't remember the first name, but Robinson's the last name. Apologies. And you had him start to come in and make some plays. I think he might have been the one that was either forced or recovered a fumble against FSU. So
DeAndre Robinson. Yep. DeAndre. Yep.
Thank you, DeAndre. Yes, DeAndre. And so he was coming in and playing, and this is a kid that didn't play at all to start the year. So that rotation is going to be there again next year. Also picked up some good pieces, obviously, in the recruiting class for the D line that we talked about. But overall, just an interesting evolution this season for this position group. Probably showed as clearly as any of the groups we had. Really, right? Their improvement throughout the season. I think they very much exemplified this defense as to what it was to start and then what it became later. So anyway, with that, though, that's my thoughts on it. If you don't have anything else, then obviously we can go to linebacker, but up to you. Go.
We go to linebacker. The last thing I will say, and one player we forgot to mention, he snapped his ankle weeks before the season started.
Good point. Jamari Lyons. How did I leave out the Cocoa Boy? Man, right? I don't know how I did that.
It's all good. I literally had him in the last part of my notes here, so I wanted to mention that because hopefully he can come back. That ankle is going to be healed, good to go, and hopefully he can be back in the fall. And because he was a force to be reckoned with at 6'3", 6'4", 310 pounds. So
and he was getting really good feedback in camp. Now, obviously, we had a lot of guys get good feedback in camp and didn't show it right away, if at all. But a lot of them that came on as this transition happened, right? So it did get. Caleb Banks was one we heard a lot of stuff about in camp. Hey, that turned out to be right, didn't it? It took a little bit, but it really turned out to be right. So, I'm definitely happy to get Jamari back. Great call out there. I didn't even think about it. It's a great point.
Yeah. Had to mention that real quick before we moved on to the linebacking position. All right. So let's move into linebacker. Let me just list a couple names for you. Shamar James, Aaron Childs, Miles Graham, Grayson Howard, Derek Wingo, RJ Moten, Deuce Spurlock, Jaden Robinson. I'll stop there. This core is an interesting core because if I'm being honest, Shamar James, who's the quarterback of this defense, the quarterback of this linebacking core, I felt like this was not his finest year.
I agree.
When you look at what he showed us last year, leading up to the Georgia game, because if you remember, the worst turf field in the world, or the worst turf, the worst field, he snaps the kneecap, pops the kneecap, he's out, he has surgery. Leading up to that game, Shamar James was an absolute animal. Ball hawk, did what he needed to do for whatever reason, unless it was the scheme, unless it was whatever, because he's the quarterback of the defense. He's calling out plays. He's making sure people are lined up properly. We did not see, or at least I did not see, I'm not going to speak for you, B, what I needed to see out of Shamar this season. It was tough. I will say, seeing something out of Miles Graham, true freshman, Aaron Childs, true freshman, hello, Derek Wingo, coming. He came, he went. I would have.
Derek did what Derek does well, which is get in there and mess up the run and rush the quarterback. He still can't,
cover worth a lick, but it is what it is.
Couldn't cover toast if he was butter. He just can't do it.
Ouch! Wow. Check, please. Okay. So, fair. RJ stepped up this year in a lot of big ways, made some good plays.
Yeah.
Spurlock. Okay. Was what? Jaden Robinson. Let me call him out.
Aiden Robinson, let's
Man,
go.
what a body, right?
Yep.
6'1", 6'2", but a slender 235. He got after the football. He got into the backfield more times than I even thought he could get back there. Okay.
Yep.
And he disrupted some plays in a big, big way. So, really curious to see what's going to happen when Miles has another year, Aaron's has another year, coming back as true sophomores, and then Jaden coming back as a junior, right?
Yep.
That's going to be, and then not to mention Pup Howard.
Yes.
Man,
Give me,
what a
give me my
pickup.
dog back. Give me my dog
What,
back. I missed him. I
right?
hate he got hurt.
Exactly. What a pickup. This guy came out of Andrew Jackson High School in Jacksonville, went to South Carolina. We found him in the portal. We brought him back home to Florida, and boy, did he flourish. I hate the abdominal injury, but based off the surgery and everything else, for all intents and purposes, he's going to be fine and healed up. I can't wait to see him get back on the field next fall. He's got a lot of unfinished business, right? And so
Yes,
in
sir.
this linebacker core, right, I would look at this core as a strength as far as what they've got here. I've got him now as a strength. What do you have on linebacker, B?
Yeah, no question. It's a strength. To me, it's the strongest position group on the defense, hands down, top to bottom, left to right, pun intended. You absolutely have the best group that we have on defense, and it's such a switch. We said at the beginning of the year, it went from
Yeah,
last year being a real question mark, and what ended up we called it a weakness by the end of the year for sure. Other
yeah.
than James, it was not good at all, and then it switches to being the strength of your defense. Like, wow, what a turnaround! It's amazing, amazing stuff. Really, really, really good. Some faces we didn't necessarily expect, as you just talked about, right? We didn't necessarily think Graham was going to get that much playing time, enough to
Right.
earn all SEC freshman, right? We didn't think that Jaden Robinson was necessarily going to get that much playing time, and yet he did and was outstanding. That guy, I think, had 2 missed tackles on the season. I mean, just unbelievable. So, so good. Really, really excited to see what this unit can turn into, especially if Shamar decides to stay, which he might, because he did start playing better. You mentioned what my take was. I agree with you. Definitely not his best year until the last 3 games. And the last 3 games, he really picked it up and really started playing better. He had some coverage issues against tight end on LSU, but then he even got that better by the end of the game and figured it out. And I mean, overall, man, he was getting sacks, he was getting tackles for loss, he was getting in the backfield again. He looked like the Shamar that I was used to seeing, and I hadn't seen that for most of the season. To your point, it was, again, I don't know what it was, if it was something about the communication or the just where to go and what to do, or maybe because he had to run the defense and be the Mike for the first time,
Right.
which maybe actually he might have been the Mike last year too, so that's not true.
I
but
was just I
but
thought so.
yeah, it was him or Wingo, depending. But
Sure.
regardless, really, really, um, really, really solid play overall. And if Shamar does come back, man, this thing is going to be a monster. It's going to be an absolute monster in linebacker. I mean, it'll be great either way, honestly. But if we get Shamar back, it's going to be even better. So we'll see what happens.
Definitely. All right. Moving on to the corner position. You ready, B? All right. On the corner
Yep.
position. Um, tough, tough, tough position. Really thought that this was a contract year, as we know, for Jason Marshall, and tough spot for him, seeing him go down with the injury, because in his UF career, he had missed a game until that injury.
Yep.
So that was what it was. Devin Moore, as much of a talent as he is, it was tough to see that right shoulder continue to wreak havoc on him. So that was what it
Yeah.
was. Who else? When I look at Asa Turner, right? His safety
Well, it's a
position.
turn. That's safety.
Let me skip that real quick. Here's the other thing. What's tough about the corner room is the injury bug. But the other thing that's tough about the
Yes.
corner room is seeing, someone like Cormani McLean get some playing time. Hey, he showed out against UCF. That was what it was. But after that, kind of got beat at Texas, and maybe it was the height of the game, and of course Texas has some fast receivers, but this position for me was a headache this year, and that's why I have to say, don't hate me, people, but it was a weakness.
Wow. Oh, I'm not going that far. I'm going to leave it at neutral.
Go ahead. That's fine.
In fact, I could even make an argument for it to be a strength. That's interesting that that's your take on it. So here's my thought. The thing I would say is that despite losing your first string guys, right, at some point throughout the season, despite losing your second string guys at some point throughout the season, because after that happened, right, Cormani and then Jakeem went down. Jakeem went down earlier, obviously. So your second string, well, I guess technically Jajon is the other second string, so I guess Cormani was third. But regardless, you ended up playing with third string guys, including Bridges, who ended up playing corner and wasn't even on this team to be a corner, clearly knew how to play it. But, I mean, we're just getting warm bodies at this point. Like, I mean, just throw somebody out there. And yet they were still fine. Sometimes maybe even plus, but mostly just fine. Now, it certainly wasn't the level we were seeing with Moore and Marshall out there, no question about it. But ultimately, they played okay. And considering, that's impressive. That's impressive because that's a lot of injury, like you talked about. Really, really tough to go through and have that happen. And to be able to maintain and at least be competent, maybe not exceptional, but competent, and in some cases, borderline exceptional. I mean, that says great things for the depth of this room. Really excited to see that, continue to move forward. But overall, I think it was pretty solid play considering that we had to get all the way down to third string in multiple different cases, or even not a string because we had to pull Bridges over from safety.
Exactly.
So that to me was impressive, but I'll leave it at neutral, but it's a lean to strength for me in this case. Because I really, really thought that, to your point, it really could have been outstanding if those guys stayed healthy. So because it wasn't that, I'll leave it at neutral, but
fair enough. And here's the other thing too. I understand the injury bug is what it is, and it stings. But when you look at all of the issues that we had on the coaching side of the football as well, I won't go into that. Yeah. We already know the issues there, and everything else that we had set up to be there. I really felt like at the start of the season, that safety position, I think, maybe it's one of the things where we said it was, or maybe I had said it was a weakness until proven wrong. And or the corner position, I get the injuries and everything else. I just, with all the other resources that we had, I didn't. And to your point, we didn't get beat compared to last year as much, but I still think the amount of times that we got beat, I thought it should have been just too many.
That's fair.
I'll just leave it at that. That's too many.
That's fair.
Right. Notably, the A&M game or Florida West game. Notably, the Texas game. So outside of Miami, that is what it is.
Yep, I hear you. All right, moving on.
Let's go. Corner room.
No, safety room.
Yeah, safety room. I can't read, people. I can't read. In the safety room, still a lot left to be desired. There's a lot of people that we did not see the better part of the field. So first thing I want to talk about, Asa Turner. It's a shame because there was a transfer that we were looking forward to coming out of Washington, and he gets hurt in the first game in the first quarter and just goes down. Never to be heard from again. So will he have a medical red shirt? Will he not? Not sure. We saw some good things come out of DJ Douglas, I will say. We saw some good things come out of Bryce Thornton.
Yes.
I will say, especially the last half of the season, what he did outside of the 2 interception game against Jackson Dart. That was what it was. Dijon Johnson stepped up, to your point, a lot of stepping up there, a lot of shifting, because here's the other thing too, with the idea that Triquez coming in playing safety, he had to switch over to corner, to your point. And so outside of that, the safety position for me, Don't hate me, people, but I'm going to go with weakness.
Yeah. So here we're going to agree. And it's not something that I started off there. I went from neutral.
I thought you were neutral. Yeah.
Yeah, at the start, because again, it was one of those where you had to prove it to me that it was better, right? Even based on the hype train that was on Castell before this
Sure.
season started. That did not turn out to work well as far
Not
as
at all.
hype trains go. He was not good this year. He was worse this year than he was last year, without question. Worse in pass coverage, worse in run defense. He maybe tackled a little better, maybe than he did last year. He probably had less missed tackles. That's about the only thing I can say overall positive. Now, I will say he played better in the last few games. Again, once again, another instance of this defense really stepping up those last 3 games. He was better in those games. He was especially in the last 2, really. Um, but when you're starting free safety that plays every game, which I question a little, is not great at all. Definitely below average, and I'm being kind in a lot of cases, right, on
Yes, you
film.
are. Yes, you
Uh,
are.
that's not going to make this position anything but a weakness, right? Because unfortunately, the only bright spot here for me really was Thornton. I didn't think Douglas was really that good either. He at least tried to get in the right places, but he missed tackles left and right. So for me, it
Sure.
was Thornton. Thornton really good in run support, then obviously also good in coverage. Where needed. I thought he was really really good, and I look for him to be a starter next year at the strong safety side. And listen, I think Castell's coming back. I don't have reason to believe he wouldn't. Portal's still open. We'll see. But he obviously started and played every game, so I would expect him to stay. And to that end, I think he can still be better. Again, he showed a couple little signs there at the end that he was starting to get with it a little more. And I really, really hope that that's something that he can continue and build on going into next year, because we need better safety play. We need better safety play. We have some great recruits this year that are coming in. That is not a position you typically see played as a true freshman. That was very unusual for Castell and Thornton to do it last year. It was purely out of need. I don't think you'll see that happen again, even though we do have some really good guys coming in. I don't know. Maybe Hilton Stubbs does play. He looks really good. So we'll see. Long story short, it's a weakness for me. I'm with you there. Thornton again is a bright spot here, and I hope that Castell can become one again going into next season. But I don't know, man, because if not, we need to look at other options, like we really do. And great call on Turner. What a disappointment for Asa. I'm sure he's bummed as anybody, and we'll see what happens. Maybe he does medically redshirt, but I don't know, because he'd have to be pretty good to beat out some of the guys in this safety room
Yes.
going into next season. So I don't know if he does or not. We'll see.
And maybe that's why he hasn't declared the medical red shirt, because we have heard nothing out of
Nothing.
Asa
Not a peep, man.
since
It's
the
been
incident.
so quiet from that camp. It's crazy.
And also, this just and I will break that from Sports Illustrated. Harrison Smudjovitz has reported that Jake Slaughter is coming back for a 5th season. There you go.
Let's go. Let's go. That's what I'm talking about. Break that news on the pod all night, buddy. That is
Bingo.
huge. That is huge. I mean, literally, metaphorically, that is huge, because we know we're almost certainly going to get Barber back one more time, right?
Yes.
You're getting Najee back, who's already playing better. He's only a sophomore.
Right.
Damian George has already said he's coming back. You keep 4 of the 5 starters on your line. The only guy you got to
Bingo.
replace is right tackle, and that's massive. I mean, that's massive. That could really make a difference for next season if these guys continue to play well and improve. Or you get a left tackle and move Barber back to right tackle, which is what I'd really like to see happen. But
Heyo.
hard to get left tackles in the portal. So we'll see how that goes down. But moving right along, that's awesome, man. That's really really good stuff. Thanks for sharing that.
Yes, sir.
Let's move on to special teams here. Make this real quick. I'll just go through all 3, and then you can give your take. Trey missed a couple kicks this year. I didn't really expect him to miss some weird yardage ones and stuff like that. But I'll say he made all the ones we needed him to make, particularly against LSU was a big one there, right? So credit to him, and this is still a strength overall. Obviously, I think we got one more year with Trey, right? Is that right, or is he gone?
That was a junior.
Okay, so theoretically one more year, and I'm good with that because he's a great kicker. But obviously, we also have the number 1 kicker coming in behind him, so we'll see what happens. Be good for him to learn for a year and go from there. Punting strength. I wrote preseason Crawshaw as the real deal, and I just kept those notes. Um, so it's still a great year out of him. I know his net did go down a little bit this year. Um, it is what it is. I didn't see reason for that being caused by anything that he was doing differently, right? We had some coverage issues at times, and just some situations where he had to punt from some weird spots. I think he had a couple of touchbacks that he really shouldn't have had, right? Balls that we missed going into the end zone that we shouldn't have. So stuff like that can mess with your net, and but I still think he did a great job, and he'll be missed. He will be for sure. Good legacy of punters at Florida. We don't talk about it, but there's a good legacy there. So hopefully we'll bring in another good one here in this recruiting class. And I heard we're looking for a transfer also, so we'll see what happens there. And then last but not least, returners. I was neutral to start this, and I'll end the same only because of DK. Otherwise, this would be a weakness for me. Though in fairness, it's probably not their fault because we don't typically get kickoff returns very often. And Baugh did fine on them for the most part. When it was Baugh, it was usually Baugh that got it. But I don't want to see him doing that again next year. He's going to be your starting running back probably in all likelihood. I don't know. Depends what happens with Webb, I guess. But he's certainly going to get a lot of touches. I don't need him returning kicks. Get him off the field. Let's get somebody else in there that, if you want a back there that can do that, I don't know, put Katie Daniels back there or something. I don't know. But I don't understand what the need for that is, and I don't want to see it again. So that's the only thing I would comment on as far as the returners go, other than obviously DK at punt, just phenomenal. Just really, really great. Way better than expected. Really surprised us a couple times. Had a couple muffs there near the end of the season, which was weird because he had really sure hands the rest of the year, but just really nice returns there. So that's my thought on special teams. What do you got?
Good rundown. I like it a lot. Kicking, I've got so Smack for the final numbers rank tied for 37 in the nation, 82.4%. I was hoping that number was going to be closer to 88 to 90. Definitely makes a couple more. Maybe it has an influence in a game or two. Outside of that, as far as the kicking game goes, I have that as a strength. It still is. He's a great kid. He's a great kicker. I expect a lot out of his senior season coming back. Punting, strength. Absolutely. Crawshaw, the mustache, the real deal. The man down under. It's amazing, too, to see the influence of the Aussie punters, especially in the SEC. So Crawshaw was the real deal. We thought he was the real deal. He is the real deal. Had a great year. Finished number 6 overall in net punting. Oddly enough, the kid Mastromani up the road at FSU was number 1, so good for him. But Crawshaw, still great punter. I agree. Some of those punts did not go his way with regards to the touchbacks, with regards to he got the ball off really quickly, didn't give chance for them to set up and really drive the ball back, so that was what it was. Returners, I have that. I understand what you were saying. We didn't get a kickback return or touchdown, but I tell you what, from the returning standpoint, we were number, I want to say, I can't find it off the top of my head, but top 10 in the nation regarding kick returning.
I believe that's correct. Yeah.
Yeah. I want to say it was roughly 19.2 yards a return. So awesome there. And then 36 yards per punt return, number 17 in the nation. So good job there overall. And then shout out real quick on the special team side to Mr. Rocco Underwood. Shout out to indeed. Rocco, right? I forget what you call the position, but either way, the manly.
Long snapper.
For long snapper. There it is.
Cool. Good stuff. So, yeah, I think that's a good breakdown of the team and positions as a whole. I think overall we ended up more or less where we thought we would. No huge surprises when we look at it, right, from kind of top to bottom there. I think the only thing would be maybe safety still being a weakness is obviously not good and something that needs to improve. And I didn't mention Bridges at safety because he transferred to corner, but Bridges was excellent at safety also. So I should have put him in as a bright spot too.
Sure.
And because he really was solid when he was in there playing. All right, so very quickly we'll move over here, talk a little record and strength of schedule. We're 7-5, but we had either the somewhere between the first and fourth when it finished out, most difficult schedule, depending on which rating sites you looked at. There were various different ones. I'm not going to cite them all, but overall, the preseason pick obviously was for us to be the hardest. We were certainly in the top 5. We can say that safely, right? And when you consider that, it is kind of an impressive record, right? What did Michigan go? 7-5. They were in the top 5 also. Now, I'm not saying that Michigan is a good team necessarily, because I don't particularly think they are, but it is something you have to look at when you look at the fact that, okay, when you play a schedule that's that tough, you have to consider that you're going to have more losses than what you might otherwise. Now, of course, it's not what we want, right? We want something that at least puts us as playoff eligible. But there were talking points at the beginning of this year. I went back and saw something just the other day on Facebook. I can't remember who it was from. I think his name is Josh something. But regardless, he was talking about that if we went 6-6, we could potentially be a top 25 team in the country with this schedule. Like, that's how hard it was, even at 6-6, and we did better than that. So can I make an argument that we're a top 25 team in the country? Yeah, you're darn right I can. I don't think that, obviously, the voting didn't go that way, which it never would with those records, because they don't take into account strength of schedule in college football like they should yet. I wonder if the playoffs are going to help some of those things, right? Start getting into some of the, I don't know what you have net rankings on basketball, and that's a net. So would we have pigskin rankings over here? I don't know what the corollary would be, but yeah. So long story short, I definitely think you can make an argument for top 25 on this team. I don't think it's much higher than that, considering what we went through and considering the schedule that we played. I think it's important to call back to that episode we had back, like I said, at the end of last season, talking about what is success, right? And really, historically, if you look all overall, it is only 7 wins. Obviously, the precedent the Spurrier set since his time at 9 wins, we weren't there. But I think it's something we could definitely, look to next year, even with a almost equally as difficult schedule. Feinbaum already said he thinks we have the toughest one. So, it's not going to be easy next year. It's maybe a little easier in some ways, but the home away stuff is challenging in a lot of ways. So we'll see what happens. But any thoughts on that from you as far as the record and strength schedule stuff?
Yeah. So a couple things. We thought at best, if we could finish the season taking 3 out of the last 5, that would be a good finish to the season. Now, we didn't know which ones.
No, that'd be phenomenal. No, 2 of the last 5 is what we wanted.
Sorry,
we only wanted 2. Yeah.
Sorry,
yeah.
Correct. 2 out of 5, right? We go 3-2 in the final 5. And the other thing was momentum, right? To secure a bowl game that we haven't seen in a minute, to secure a bowl game, not on the last game of the season, but with 2 to go, that was huge. The other thing is the injury bug bit us for real.
Yeah, good
Folks,
point.
Trey Wilson was missed. Trayon Webb missed. Jabari Lyons missed.
Yep.
Okay. These are integral pieces of what Billy thought we can go in and really compete with this season. 100%. Asa Turner, he was gone for the whole season. I know he played the first game, but he was injured the first quarter. It's gone. Yep. Didn't even see Asa. And this is a kid who, older, I get that, but national championship experience, right? Big stage experience. So that's what we're supposed to see. And as much as we wanted, I want to say in the season preview, B, you predicted 7-5. I predicted 8-4. Again, look at how close we were. If DJ Lagway finishes the game at Georgia,
you got a real shot at being 8-4.
Right. Again, semantics. I get it. It's in the past. We had enough brownie to clean up the spilled milk. That's fine. But at the end of the day,
I could also argue for your 8-4 against Tennessee, buddy, because that game.
And that brings me to the next game. Tennessee in overtime, and Graham goes down when? At the end of the third quarter, going into the fourth quarter, and for 3 consecutive drives, punt, punt, punt. And then all of a sudden, on 3rd and 17, dart, touchdown, tie game. What?
Yep. But
So
should have never come to that, to your point, because we
should have
should have
never
been winning
come to
by
that,
14 in the first half and we were tied. So
right? Leaving 14 to 17 points on the board in the first. Either way, 7-5 for the injury bug, for the schedule, for all the other noise surrounding this season regarding the hot seat and Napier and Booster and
yep.
$26 million and hot. I just tell you what, 7-5, that dog will hunt. We'll take it.
Yeah, it's really not bad. And I think that's the point that we're trying to make here. Again, it's not what any of us want. We obviously want to be competing for titles. That's the goal for sure. But when you look at this season, this team, this talent level, this, experience level, right? It's still a young team. It's not now, but it was, right? And you look at all those things and factor in that schedule, and you really, I'm not saying we should be, overjoyed by 7-5. I'm never going to make that argument, but I do think maybe satisfied should be a feeling that we have, especially with how we closed out those last three to get there. I think satisfied is maybe something that we should be feeling right now as Gator fans, and certainly hopeful.
There you go.
Satisfied and certainly hopeful. Again, I think more hopeful with an offensive coordinator, but still hopeful. How many times can I work it into an episode? Let's
and
play
he
it.
drops it in, folks. Nice plug.
All right. Full season superlatives. Let's give out our own little awards here. We had the award show over the weekend, of course, and the Heisman and all that stuff. We'll give out our awards here real quick and go through that. Get us started. Who you got for offense?
So this is someone that I don't think people would have given a lot of credit based off the fact that he was in the transfer portal. But I'll tell you what, he did a lot of things to allow the deep ball threat to happen. And so for me, my full season superlative is going to be Mr. Elijah Badger.
Wow. Wow. Okay. All right.
Yeah.
I like it.
Yeah.
I like it. Was the leading receiver.
A leading receiver, leading deep threat receiver. And that's the other thing, too. He gave a nice, warm basket for DJ Lagway to throw a beautiful, magical, deep ball. There you go, B.
I like it. Good stuff. All right. I'm giving it to Jaden Ball, man. I think temptation here would really be Lagway for me. And I have zero doubt he's going to be my superlative next year, like he just is. But Jaden did some incredible stuff as a freshman running back in the SEC, a true freshman running back. And I mean, we identified this coming out of the spring game that he was just a little different, right? With some of the stuff he could do at his size. Now, that doesn't always translate, and you can't always use the spring game. Of course, we're not Nostradamuses over here going to be able to prognosticate every player that's going to be good based on what they do in the spring game. However, the two guys who showed out pretty well in the spring game, Jaden Ball, Jacoby Jackson, neither one of them had a bad year. Just saying. At least they're running back. So from a running back standpoint, we can get a little feel moving forward from the spring game. We'll see. We'll keep trying. So regardless, it's definitely Jaden. I'm super, super excited to see him come back and be, again, probably the starter, I would think, but it depends on Webb. I would want to see Bobby the starter. Let's put it that way. And really look forward to seeing what he can do next season. So with that, let's move it over to defense. Who you got?
All right. So again, one that you might not think about, but for me, this guy, we asked him to do a lot of different things, and we also asked him to switch positions. So for me, on the defensive side of the football, I'm going to say Traquez Bridges, especially as a transfer. Guess what? First year on the team, leads the team in tackles, 70 total tackles. Last year, our leading tackler, Jordan Castell, was 60. So awesome.
Yeah, really great point. And he didn't even really play that much to start the season either, right? He was barely in those first couple of games, right? Yep. So that's the other thing you have to look at. Castell, as we know, played the whole year. So that's phenomenal. I have the same. I have Bridges as well. That is my guy here. So and again, we do not talk about this stuff beforehand. So that is totally random and really interesting. There was a lot I could have gone to for this, several people that stood out, but I think the way I feel about it is that the team really, the defensive side of the ball was really started to play as a unit when it started to play better. And Bridges was a part of that, certainly. But again, to your point, it was the switch of positions. I would have given this to Jason Marshall in a heartbeat if he had kept playing the way he was playing and finished the season. Like, no question, it would have been him. However, I got to give it to Bridges because, again, he came in, played well at safety when we needed help, and then switched to corner when we needed help and played well once again. So what a versatile guy. All the best in the draft, man. I really hope he gets a decent position after putting some of the stuff he put on film this year, including the butt targeting, which is still the dumbest thing I've ever seen in my life. But but regardless, really think that he was excellent this year, and wish him nothing but the best, man. Really glad we brought him in, and heck of a year. So last but not least, who's your freshman?
Should I just go ahead and cue it up?
Yeah, do it.
Let's just go ahead and cue it up, shall we? All right, ladies and gentlemen. Actually, I shouldn't say it. Say this. Say go DJ. Let my DJ. Say go DJ. Let my DJ. Say go DJ. Let my DJ. Say go DJ. Let my. I'll just leave it at
yes,
that.
Yes, sir.
You take it from there.
Yes, sir. No question. It's got to be Lagway, right? There's no question about it. He obviously brought us wins that I don't think we would have otherwise gotten. His impact on the team is palpable, whether it's when he's throwing the ball or leading the group before or after a game. He's already in the Heisman talk for 25 from multiple different sources already, which is wild, right? Because you don't typically see sophomores get put in that until their performance in the year that they're potentially being voted for dictates it, right? Nobody was talking about Tebow for Heisman in his sophomore year. He won it, but nobody was talking about it before the year started. I'm not saying that he's going to be the Heisman, but the fact that he's in the conversation, wow, just amazing stuff. Sky's the limit, and I can't wait to see it. Good stuff. All right, let's move it along. Let's do a little keep it or pitch it for the 2024 season. We made these picks preseason, and we are going to go through them now and see how we did. So first and foremost, the Gators will have a kick or punt return for a touchdown this season. We both kept that. We really thought with all the returners. Now, in fairness, this was before we knew that Jaden Ball was returning kicks. We thought it'd be Tank, but that didn't happen. But DK, I thought, was really going to get us there, but then he had those, couple of kind of rough games at the end there, and not as good of returns as what he had been doing. So unfortunately, yet another season, no kicker punt return for a TD. Was Brandon James the last one, man, at this point? Like, I don't even know. It's been a long time. I'm sure that's not the case, but.
Oh, he's got to be. I can't think of it. I mean,
no, there has to be another one. It can't have been 15 years. There's no way.
Time flies when you're having to wait to have a winning program again. Just saying.
Yeah, we'll have to check that out and research that because we haven't looked at it, and it's not the easiest stat in the world to find. But we'll have to do some research and figure that out. It's the last one I can remember, to your point, though, because obviously he was very memorable. But all right, so we were both wrong there. So 0-1 for both of us. Number 2, the Gators defense will have over 29.5 sacks this season. We both kept that. I think 38 got that number done just a little bit. As we already mentioned, heck of a close to the season, so really good stuff there. Number 3, the Gators will average under 3 procedural penalties per game. So we specified this out, right? Your delay of games, your false starts, your offsides, right? Your 12 personnel, right? Can't get the right people on the field. These are all procedural things, right? Now we had I don't even have the word for how many we had last year. We didn't count them last year. They were probably too many to count. I don't know if I can count that high. But it was bad last year. And we said this needed to improve. And so we called for under 3. I kept it. You pitched it. This is our one that we differed on in the preseason. And I am happy to say that it was under. Not because I was right, but because it means we actually showed improvement in this stat. So we ended up the season at 2.17. So pretty good stuff there. Yeah, 2.17 is an average. So which was up from midseason. So the back half of the season was not as good, but be that as it may. All right, number 4, Gators offense will average 31.5 points per game this season. We were 28.4 last year, number 57th overall, and we said that okay, we will average, like I said, the over 31.5, which was back to what we did 2 years before, basically. However, we both pitched this. I said it might be close. I was wrong. It was not close. 27.9, lower than last year. So that's not good and something that needs to be addressed. Now, again, with the injuries, having the one game with, Texas in there where we had no offense, right? These things do play in and play a part, but overall, we still not probably, we need to be higher on this number. So, lastly, so we missed that one there. So I'm currently 2-2. And let me see here. Oh no, we both pitched that, so we were right there. Sorry, that's where it is. So I'm three. I was 3-1 through this, and you were 2-2. Sorry. Um, Last but not least, the Gators defense will hold opponents to 24.5 points per game. We were 27.58 for number 75 in 2023. We both pitched this. I said it was very close. It was very close, but it wasn't a pitch. It was a keep. 24.3. We got under that number. And that was still only good for somewhere in the 60s, by the way, in total defense, or scoring defense, which is crazy to me. I don't know how you go from 75 at 27.58 and then drop it over 3 points per game and only go up like 10 rankings. Like, that's wild. Very, very different years in the league from this year and last year in the football bowl subdivision. Not the same kind of numbers we thought we'd see. But at any rate, that means I ended up 3-2. You ended up 2-3. So very, very close, but we did split that one as we knew we would because we picked on opposite sides of it. So there you go. All right. Gasparilla Bowl, keep it or pitch it. Let's talk about Tulane a little here, talk about what we got coming up. Now, some of these numbers, before we get into them, before I read them, I should say, they're not necessarily indicative of what we think Tulane is potentially going to show us for various different reasons. If you don't know, all their quarterbacks are in the portal, but one who is in the portal, not their starter, their backup, is going to go ahead and play, or at least that was the last word on it.
Yep.
And then in addition to that, you have to remember that a lot of these numbers, for the most part, were against Group 5 competition, not Power 4, which of course is where we lie and play in the SEC. So they did have a couple Power 4 teams on their schedule, but for the most part, these were stats that were shown against the relatively similar level of competition, right? Which we typically would do quite well against. So that's something to keep in mind. All right. So to that point, Tulane ranks number 2 in the nation on third down conversions at 52.5%. So they are very good on third down. The Gators rank 84th in third down conversion defense at 40.9%. Definitely a little higher this year than it was last year, to say the least. However, having said that, the Gators will hold Tulane under 41% on third down conversions. And there's a reason we set that number so low, and I'll get to that later. But keep it or pitch it.
Yeah, B. At the end of the day, I'm going to keep this one. We have a backup quarterback to a backup going in the portal. And the other thing about him is that, as we've seen, this guy started off as a 5-star 2 years ago and has dropped down to a mid 3-star. His rating continues to get worse. Big game for him. First career start. He's going to be frazzled. And not to mention on third down, when he sees that pressure, no dice. Keeping it.
Yep, I'm with you there. I think the sack party may come out again in this game. We'll see. That's going to be one of these later, but I'm going to keep it as well. I think this is a team that's going to be a little bit physically overmatched here. I don't think they're going to be able to quite keep up, despite their ranking in NCAA being equal to ours, by the way, and their overall team rating, which is shocking. NCAA 25 is the one I'm referring to there. I think that's a little off base, but we'll move on. So on to the next one. Florida ranks number 78 in the nation in passing offense at 219 yards per game. Tulane ranks number 6 in the nation in passing defense, believe it or not. Again, remember who they were playing, right? 167.9 is all they're allowing. Again, we're going to go big on this number here because we think it's, there's a talent discrepancy here and things of that nature. So Gators will have over 245 yards of passing offense. Keep it or pitch it.
Yeah, we've seen DJ to be valuable in the pocket or efficient from the pocket, even though he was at 80% with that hamstring. He's going to have time to rest it. We're going to have time to do some things. I'm keeping that number all day long.
All right. I'm going to pitch it. So we are going to differ here.
Oh.
write down your pick here. And the reason why is I think we don't know how much DJ will have been able to heal. It's not a tremendous amount of time since the last game. Obviously, it's an early bowl game. Unfortunately, not thrilled about that, but it is what it is. And we will, we will see how that goes. But I think he's solid in this game. I think he plays a good game, but I don't know that we're going to have him like need to throw the ball that much. And I could see this getting into another ground and pound thing and stuff like that in the run game. So we'll see what happens. It certainly could happen. I'm not going to sit here and say I think that I feel super strongly about that pick. It's just a guess. So we'll see. And for the record, I hope he does throw for more, but I'm not going to pick it. So, all right, last but not least, Tulane ranks number 29 in the nation, allowing 1.31 sacks per game, which is surprising to me that that's number 29, but all right. And the Gators are averaging 3.17 sacks per game, again, against superior competition, quite frankly, 38 sacks in 12 games. The Gators will compile at least 3 sacks on Friday. Keep it or pitch it.
Yeah, man, we got some people balling out. We got some starters returning. They're playing in the bowl game. I'm keeping that all day long.
Yep, I'm with you there too. I'm going to keep it as well. So it'll be the DJ stat that decides this one and sees where we end up for the full season, including the bowl. Obviously, we already did the full season without it, but regardless. So getting to the point about third down and why I made that earlier, the Sims results that we ran. So we only went 7-3, which was a little surprising to me. Now, again, we don't use this as a predictive tool, though maybe we should because it's been remarkably accurate. It's really only missed on one all season, and that being Tennessee, and said we should have won, and we didn't, and I could argue we should have won. Everything else, it has been spot on predicting whether or not we would win or lose by running 10 Sims with the accurate lineups. Just saying. Very remarkable. We'll see if that trend continues. I'm going to keep doing these next season. Probably use 26 for that, obviously, but we will see what happens. So very intriguing. Anyway, as always, we try to find a stat that kind of shows, okay, when we won, what did this stat look like? And when we lost, what did it look like? And it really was third down percentage again. Now, the last time we called out third down percentage, I believe, was LSU, and they had an incredible third down percentage, and we still won the game. So it's not to say that this is going to necessarily be indicative, right? There are certainly things with this stat in particular that if you make high leverage plays, if you have that bend don't break type of thing, right, the whole nine, that it may not be that big of a deal in the long run. However, if Tulane goes over 40% on third down, the game doesn't like our chances. Let's put it that way, right? But again, there's things about that I don't think that the game necessarily takes into account in terms of like getting sacked, right? Getting tackles for loss. What does that do to the psychology of a team, right? When that starts happening a lot, right? I don't think that's factored into their algorithm. It's good algorithm. It's a good game, but it definitely I don't think can factor in that emotional turmoil that can cause. So with that's the key takeaway and something I think we should watch out for. But I would not put stake that if they do get over that we definitely lose or something. I don't think that's the case at all. So there you go. With that, I think we're ready to wrap this thing up and close it out. We do have some upcoming episodes that we do want to share a little bit of information about. We've already talked about them a little bit previously. You want to run that down there, Randy?
Am I on? Okay, awesome.
Yes, you're on.
Okay.
Does this thing work?
Bueller. Okay, so outside of that, folks, our next regularly scheduled pod is going to be coming up on Monday the 23rd. That's going to be in review of the Tulane game in the Gasparilla Bowl. So that's going to be that. And then outside of that, coming up in mid-January, we'll have another shorter pod. And then after that, we've got National Signing Day coming up on February 5th. So we will drop a pod there on February the 10th.
Yes, and there could be two in between there, could only be one in between there. We haven't fully worked that out for the January scheduling yet. Like you said, we might do two shorter ones or we might still do a longer one. So we'll we're still playing around with that, and we'll figure it out. But there will be at least one in January and then one at the beginning of February at a minimum for what's going to follow the bowl game here. Taking a little time off for the holidays, and then we'll get back into the swing of things in 2025. So with that, thank you as always to everybody who has stayed with us throughout our hour and a half long-ish venture here. A little over again tonight. Sorry about that. But at any rate, we will definitely continue to look forward to bringing you these each week as we go forward, or getting into that off-season cadence of probably about every 2 to 3 weeks, depending on what we end up doing for the size of the pod. So thank you again, and I'll let Randy sign us off.
Awesome, my man. Enjoyed it, loved it. And wherever you are, wherever you may be listening, thank you for taking the time, and we will see you around Gator Nation.